Hey guys, so in today's video, I want to be talking about my second year experience at Sac State. If you want to watch my first year experience, I'll link in the description box. Also, my window's open by the way, so you might hear a little bit of background noise. I have a whole list on my phone so that I don't forget things. The first thing I want to talk about is morning classes, because I had a couple of morning classes, and the fall semester of my second year, I had a stats class at 8 in the morning, and then, no, at 9 in the morning, and then right after that, I have an English class at 10, and then I have like an hour gap before I have more classes. And because I live in Davis, I have to drive to Sacramento. I usually like to give myself at least 30 minutes or more, because it depends on the traffic. It can vary every day, so that means I usually wake up around 6 or 7, and then I try to leave at 8 latest. And sometimes it can be really hard to get out. Because of that, sometimes I would skip class and not go to my morning classes at all. And although obviously you can't really control your schedule that much, I needed these classes, and these were the only classes that I could get and that would work with the rest of my schedule. So just think about that. But as I was saying, because I had an hour gap before the rest, or it was like, I think an hour and 30-minute gap before my next classes. After my morning classes, I would go get lunch, eat, and then I would just nap in my car. And then for the spring semester, I had 2 morning classes. I guess they're not really morning classes, but they're pretty early still for me. I had an online class at 10. I have my communication speech class right after at 11. Because of my online class that occurs right before my in-person class, I didn't like that when I was signing up, because it was stated to be a hybrid class, but it ended up being completely online. For that reason, I had to get to school to do my online class at school, so that I'll be able to go to my communications class, right? So that means I have to wake up at 8-ish or 7-ish, and I have to leave at 9 latest to get to school on time. So that was a little bit bearable for me compared to last semester. So that's all for my morning classes. I want to talk a little bit about failing my classes. In fall semester, I had 3 classes I was taking for my business major, and I failed 2 of those classes. I ended up getting a D and an F. For that reason, I ended up changing majors, which I'll talk about later on, because the classes I failed was accounting 1 and my stats class, since someone didn't show up to class. Accounting 1, that was my second time taking it. I failed it my first semester, which I think I talked about in my first video. Sorry, not my first semester, my first year. The way I was thinking, I couldn't retake it again. Like, technically I could, but that'd be wasting time. It was my fault. I ended up wasting time on those classes when I could be doing other things. So just think about that, like the more important classes, put a little bit more effort into. I didn't, because I was just tired. Moving on to changing majors, because I failed too many of my business classes. These are just prerequisite classes, by the way, to get into the business major. Being a second year, I want to finish in 4 years, and so my thought was that I can't waste any more time trying to get these prerequisite classes, because it's not like I can do upper division business classes or take other business classes while I'm retaking these. So it's just gonna be a waste of time, in my opinion. I needed 3 more classes: accounting 1 that I failed, my stats class that I failed, and then accounting 2. And I can't take accounting 2 until I do accounting 1. And so that means I'll be able to do accounting 2 in my 3rd year. And that's just, for prerequisite classes, that's taking too much time. So I had to change majors. Originally, I considered child development, which is why I actually took a child development class in my spring semester. Although it kind of came naturally to me, I decided that I wanted to try philosophy, because I took a critical thinking GA class and I actually really enjoyed that class. I'll see how that goes like next year, since I signed up for classes. Also, my baby's being kind of fussy in the background. If you hear her making noises, that's just my baby. Moving on to general education classes. As I explained multiple times in this video, because I failed my business classes, I took the spring semester to fill up my GEs. I was behind in my communication speech class. It's typical that you do your speech class your freshman year. I didn't do that. I felt like I was really behind in that. I still need to do some like more like of like the basic lower division GE classes. I was hoping to do that this summer, but then summer classes seem like a hassle. I've heard a lot of issues with financial aid. You don't get your financial aid for summer classes until your last summer class starts. So summer classes, you can either take classes for 12 weeks or take one for the first 6 weeks and take one for the last 6 weeks, depending on which classes. Like, it's not like you get to pick, the classes are assigned in that way. And so if you end up taking a class from the first 6 weeks and a class from the last 6 weeks, you don't get your financial aid until the class for the last 6 weeks starts, I believe. And at the moment, I just don't have the kind of money to pay for all my classes in the beginning of summer session, so I just decided not to do it. Moving on to textbook, I ended up using more textbooks this year than my first year. I bought all of my textbooks because for my classes, it was like I couldn't really find any online like for free. I ended up using some of it, some I didn't use at all. I did use the textbooks for my child development and English classes just because they were required for like assignments a lot. My stats class, which math classes, typically you buy the textbook and it comes like with the homework and all of that. So that's how math classes typically work. Same with accounting, you buy the textbook and that's like the homework as well. So you kind of have to buy the textbook for math classes. And then for my critical thinking GE class, I took History 10. There was one available online, but I prefer hard copies, and it didn't cost that much, so I ended up buying it. I didn't use it much. We only used it for like the first, I don't know, 3 weeks of class. And then I took a business law class. There was a textbook that was supposedly required. I never bought it, I never needed it, and I passed that class with a B. So it just really depends on the classes, I guess. Moving on to professors, everyone knows about Rate My Professor, so you can always check on that. My accounting 1 professor, I was surprised that she knew my name and she knew me by face, which was nice. And I also like her. I think she's one of the better accounting 1 professors, which sucks that I had such a great professor and I ended up failing because I didn't put in enough effort. And then I took a geology class, and my professor knew people, but she didn't know me, which is fine because I didn't talk and I didn't participate a lot. So I would say, like, because most of the classes at Sac State are tinier than your typical like big lecture classes, there's a chance that you could get to know your professor if you really wanted to. And then I actually was pregnant the entire school year. My baby's right here. I was pretty stressed out fall semester. Spring semester came by a lot easier, but because I was so stressed in the beginning of my pregnancy, I couldn't really focus on my classes. That's the other thing. And it mixed with my morning classes, it was just a lot for me to handle. I was due in May, early May, and that's right at the end of the semester. Like, last week of instructions and finals is early May. All of my professors were super understanding and accommodating. My English professor was like, whenever you go into labor, just let me know and I'll excuse you from the rest of the assignments and you'll end up with the grade that you have the moment you go into labor. My geology professor, she also said the same thing, like she also excused me from assignments. Whereas my child development professor, she was willing to work with me so that I could like get things done before I go into labor. And as for my History 10 class, I wasn't worried about it because towards the end we were just working on our final paper. So that's that. Most of my classes had finals online, so I was able to do that after I gave birth. Moving on to parking, many of my classes were on the north side of campus. There's one parking structure all the way on the north side of campus, and that's the one by Yosemite Hall. It usually has spots. It can be really full, especially since there's only 2 floors for student parking and then 2 floors for resident parking. I always find a spot even if it's like really full, and when I don't, I risked parking in an employee spot before and I didn't get a ticket. So parking structure 4, I think that's the one by the well. It always has spots. I just avoided it because it was kind of inconvenient for me. I didn't have any classes on that side of campus. I mean, if you prefer the parking lots, go for it, but in my opinion, the parking lots are a little bit further and it can get really hot. So, and in the beginning of the school year, there was lots of traffic, so be prepared for that and come early. I didn't come early just because I didn't think about it, and I ended up missing my first class, first day of school, because there's so much traffic, so many people trying to park and stuff. It did die down as the year went by, obviously. And in spring semester, I wouldn't say the traffic was that bad once spring semester started. It's not as important since I was leaving campus, but in the fall, whenever I would leave my business law class, sometimes I don't attend that class, but when I do, it's at 3 and it ends at 4. When I'm trying to leave campus, there's just so many people also leaving, and it can take like 20 minutes to just exit campus. So if you have somewhere to go, just think about that. Moving on to my social life. I personally don't really care for my social life, but I know some people do. I'm gonna talk about my social life in classes first. For my History 10 class, my professor had us work in groups for the entire semester, and I ended up getting pretty close to those people. I think that's the most socializing I would say I did the entire school year, which might be kind of sad, but I'm not a really social person, so that's like perfect for me. My group had 4 other people, so it's a group of 5. Yeah, we never hung out outside of class, but I would say we were still close. Not like super close, but we were like good classmates, I guess. We had like a group chat and all for communication. And then my Discord chats for my classes this year, it was like minimally used. I was kind of surprised at how dead they were, because my Discord chats for my classes in the first year, they were like pretty active. And then in many of my other classes, we had to do partner and group work. Not the entire like semester, but just occasionally. Personally, I'm just not really interested in like making friends, socializing, hanging out at school. I just rather go home since I live so far away. And the fact that I was pregnant, I just wanted to like be home, relax. But I would say like if you're lonely and you want to make friends, join like a club or like a frat or sorority. It's the easiest way to make friends. And then I don't know if like Sac State has any online groups anywhere else. But I joined a couple Facebook groups. They're actually very active. I got most of my questions answered from there. I either asking or just other people also has the same questions. And I also have it for like textbooks. If you're selling textbooks or trying to buy textbooks, that's helpful. Just look it up on Facebook. And then lastly, I know this video is really long. Lastly, I'll talk about campus. The Well. I've only been to the Well maybe like a couple of times, and that was for dance practice. I went over during the summer, so you can still go to the Well during the summer. Personally, I think it looks nice, but it's a little crowded looking, and it can get really full as well, even in the summer. And then the Union, I've never been inside the Union. I've walked past it many times, but I've never actually stepped foot in it, so I don't know anything about it, and I can't provide any information on it. For the library, I never stepped foot in the library this year because I didn't have a class in the library. I've only gone in there to use the bathrooms, because since there's a bathroom on every floor, they can be pretty empty at times. And I've only sat, like, if you go to Sac State, you'll know what I'm talking about. At the back of the library, there's a bunch of tables. I've only sat there to study and eat a couple times. And then I actually went to the arboretum for the first time this year. It's for my geology class. It's actually really nice looking. You guys should like go to the arboretum whenever you get a chance, because it just looks nice. But I feel like if it wasn't by like busy streets, if it was in a different location, maybe more students would go to it. It was pretty dead when I went, besides my classmates. But yeah, I feel like it could be really nice to just hang out in the arboretum or study. Also, it was like on the edge of campus. It's on the north side of campus, so it's just kind of inconvenient to get there. The fact that you have to like cross a street, it's not like a big street, but I can see why people wouldn't go there. Because I did have like some online classes that I did do at school, I would just do them in like little study areas in buildings like Mendocino Hall. I had my speech class in there, and there's like little study areas. That's where I would do my online class. And I didn't really go to the library for that, just because my professor was super picky about it. She was like, you have to participate, so you can't be in an area where you can't talk. I did study on the like benches outside. Like there's one right outside of the parking structure by Yosemite Hall. I like it because it's very secluded and quiet. Yeah, I think that's about it. In my free time, I didn't really spend time on campus because I don't live in Sac. I take the opportunity to kind of like do errands I needed to do in SAC, or just explore SAC or get food in SAC rather than stay on campus. So yeah, that's my second year experience at Sac State. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you guys want to watch my first year experience, like I said, I'll link it somewhere, and then I'll probably do a third year experience as well. Thank you for watching.